Long-awaited finale for Cour 2 is finally here. Similar to Cour 1, we had the two final episodes of the season being released at the same time, with episode 25 titled The Master and episode 26 titled Black. Episode 25 roughly adapts 5 chapters worth of manga content spanning from chapters 602 to 606. There are notable changes to the order of events because the anime has diverged from the manga in a significant manner. Episode 25 features several anime-exclusive fight sequences, with Uryu battling Senjumaru and Hashwad battling Korinji. Now, these new fight scenes showcase the Zero Division members utilizing several new abilities that we haven't seen within the manga. Now, one of the highlights of episode 25 and 26 is Senjumaru, who gets a lot of screen time. Additionally, during ICHIBE's battle with Yuhabak, there are several new lines of dialogue which reference the 4-minute flashback scene from the start of the last episode. Now, we do also have a post-credit scene for episode 25, which features Uhitake and Shunsui speaking about the Kamikake ritual, as Shunsui then mysteriously reveals that he needs to visit the Central 46 for some reason. The final episode of Cour 2, episode 26, features a lot of anime-only sequences, as the anime continues to alter the source material by adding to the manga in a significant manner. Surprisingly, episode 26 adapts less manga material than all of us were expecting, as it covers material from chapter 607 to the halfway point of chapter 609, so roughly 2.5 chapters worth of content, which had completely caught me by surprise. Episode 26 continues to change and add to the manga by giving us additional fight scenes, with the Zero Division battling the Schutzstaffel, which is totally different to the manga, where everyone was pretty much off-screened following the revival of the Schutzstaffel. Senjumaru once again gets so much screen time as she single-handedly battles each of the revived members of the Schutzstaffel, as well as Nimaya ending up surviving the events of this week's episode, which completely alters his fate in comparison to the manga, because at this point he was virtually dead in the manga. So for this reason, I was expecting Nimaya to have been taken out within episode 26. Now also, Ichibe vs Yuhabak didn't end up being wrapped up in this episode, nor did we get to see Yuhabak using the Almighty. Now this is a sign of some behind the scenes troubles, which I will be addressing at the end of this video, so definitely be sure to stick around until the end of the video, because I'll be speaking about the state of the Cour 2 finale and what this means for the future of the 1000 Year Blood War arc anime. So this is a video that you absolutely cannot afford to miss, because there's so much to speak about as we have 2 episodes to cover. We've got to discuss all of the new scenes, as well as speak about the production issues and fan reaction to the Cour 2 finale. So without further delay, here are my thoughts on the final 2 episodes of the second season of Bleach's 1000 Year Blood War arc anime. So let's speak about how episode 25 handles the story of the manga and how well paced the episode is. So coming off of the insane events that occur within episode 24, we get an equally insane episode that starts from the bottom and escalates all the way into the stratosphere. This episode carries over the tradition of rearranging the manga's content in order to give manga readers and anime-only fans a totally new experience. Episode 25 adapts material from chapter 602 to 606, as so much of the events that occur within this chapter are chopped and changed around in order to suit the new narrative of the anime. I use the term adapt very loosely here because while the episode does adapt some of the manga content, it mostly does its own thing with the order of events, and when it isn't altering the order of events, it's creating completely new scenarios for the anime. The choice to reorder events was one of the best directorial choices for episode 25. The episode begins with a rearranged scene as it adapts Yushiro and the Vizard's arrival at Urahara's lab. Now this is an event that takes place in chapter 606, as it faithfully adapts the entire interaction, and it's really nice to see Hiyori and the Vizards again. I don't think that I've ever talked about this interaction in a video before, but I really do like this conversation that happens here, and I love how the anime is able to supplement the greatness of this scene with the amazing work of the voice actors and the fantastic art direction on display. The story uses Urahara and Hiyori's former relationship as captain and lieutenant for the foundation of this conversation. This is because Hiyori raises a series of plausible questions about Urahara's decision to send Yoriichi and Ichigo and the others to the Soul King's palace without them. This makes perfect sense, since if there is any character who would understand Urahara's motives and his nature, it would definitely be his former lieutenant Hiyori. Combining the dark red skies with the surrounding debris and rain, all of it adds to the atmosphere, and it really conveys the weight of Hiyori's questioning and the dark implications of Urahara's decision to do things for the sake of the Serete. It is after this interaction that the opening song begins playing, and if any of you have forgotten, Yoriichi's younger brother Yushiro Shihoin was also introduced here. Following the opening song, we cut back to events from chapter 604 where Yhwach questions Ichibe to let him through, basically a replay of the final scene of episode 24. Now I really do hope that none of you have motion sickness, because we're about to be rocketed back and forth between manga chapters which are mixed together with all new anime original scenes, which reveal to us new events that are occurring currently within Kiryo's Cage of Life. Nimaya points his sword at Hashwad and Uryu, who are the only surviving Quincy within the cage. He asks both of them who would like to step up first to fight him, since their terrible king was the first to run away, as he states that he'll just settle for killing the successor to the king. The two remain silent as we're sent back to the Soul King's palace, where we then see the remaining events of chapter 605 adapted, as the conversation between Ichibe and Yhwach is faithfully adapted, and it ends with Yhwach getting knocked out of the palace with Ichibe's ability Senri Sutesho. I really loved the animation for Ichibe's ink here, and I really do hope that they carry on with this same energy going into episode 26. The ensuing fight is also faithfully adapted, as we then cut back to Nimaya and the Quincy's in another anime original scene. Nimaya appears to be indifferent as to who is going to challenge him, as Hashwad answers his call by stating that the scales have tipped as he unsheaths his blade. Now if you recall, I've mentioned in previous reviews that Hashwad is noticeably less hostile and aggressive towards Uryu. This alteration in his character appears to be carried forward into this episode, as it seems as though Hashwad was actually protecting Uryu here. Now hear me out, Nimaya first asked the king's successor to step forward, and this fight is of course taking place multiple episodes after Yhwach had announced to the Sternritter that Uryu was going to be his successor. And over the course of Cour 2, we have seen Hashwad address Uryu by the title of successor at least once. So when it comes to a life or death situation where Yhwach's successor has been threatened, Hashwad ended up stepping forward to protect him instead of outing Uryu as Yhwach's successor and having him fight instead. The nuance behind this very brief interaction was very fascinating to dissect, and it really looks like the anime is trying to build a genuine bond between Hashwad and Uryu, which will definitely make the end of their relationship all that more impactful when they eventually do, spoiler here, fight each other. So yeah, I'm in support of all of these changes that are happening to Hashwad's character, and I cannot wait to see how their dynamic unfolds as the story progresses. After Hashwad draws his blade, we get what is essentially our very first glimpse of Hashwad's shrift ability to balance in the anime. Hashwad states that they should thank their good fortune for not having to fight Yhwach themselves, and he then uses the balance in order to deliver an equivalent amount of misfortune to them, which results in Kiryo's Cage of Life beginning to break apart. Now if you remember, in my video speaking about the balanced shrift ability, I theorized that this ability was so broken that it basically allows Hashwad to screw over his enemies over any good thing that happens to them. And this anime original scene certainly supports this idea, as we see the devastating effects of the balance unfold before our very eyes. Now secondly, this also confirms that the balance operates by a seemingly different concept from Reishi, Reiatsu or Reiryoku. This is proven by Kiryo's Cage of Life, which is specifically designed to absorb spiritual energy and to grow stronger as a result of doing so. This would mean that Hashwad's the balance ability should have no effect if its actions were tied to spiritual energy, but seeing that the balance has no difficulty in tearing the Cage of Life apart, I'm inclined to believe that the balance works in a very different way, which is very impressive to see confirmed here. As the anime original scene continues, we see Kiryo run up to the top of her cage as she creates some saplings from her body, which grow to become gigantic wooden constructs which reconnect the two broken halves of her cage, essentially repairing it. In this original scene, it showcases how Kiryo has the ability to infuse her Reiatsu into other matter in order to enhance it. Now this is stuff that we already do know about Kiryo's powers. She is able to create life from her body, but it's nice to see again nonetheless. Following this, we see Korinji hurl a massive amount of his white bone hellspring water at Uryu and Hashwad. Now this is a very smart decision from Korinji here, because if they would have left Hashwad alone with Nimaya, then he would have reversed their good fortune in having the Cage of Life repaired, and who knows what amount of damage he would have inflicted onto the cage or onto the Zero Division. Uryu manages to escape from Korinji's hot spring water by what appears to be Hairen Hyaku. He appears right in front of Senjumaru, who wastes very little time in attacking him, as she and Uryu begin to exchange blows as they both taunt each other. Uryu very skillfully parries her strikes as she wields needles with her golden arms. Uryu defends himself by coating his hands with Blutveen, which is really exciting to see here. After reading the manga, I'd always wondered whether if Uryu could use Blutveen, scene, since in the manga we never actually really see him use it, so I'm really happy with the anime exclusive fight sequence, as it confirms that even Uryu is able to use such an advanced level Quincy technique. And not only this, he is utilizing it against a very powerful opponent, and while he isn't really going all out here, it is still giving him enough defense so that her attacks are not hurting him. So this anime only moment in episode 25 is a massive W for Uryu fans. Now while this is going on, Kirinji releases his Zanpakuto Kinpika as he jumps to attack Hashwald, who was still trapped within his water. Hashwald responds by defending himself with his shield, which he uses to block the Shinigami's attack. While we see Kinpika in action, there's not really a whole lot that we can deduce about its abilities here, but what is apparent is that it lights up and seemingly has very high piercing abilities. We're going to come back to this fight because following this anime exclusive scene, we cut back to manga content from chapter 601, and I love how seamlessly these scenes are integrating into one another, as the anime original scenes really fit with the flow of the story. As Nimaya begins to ascend the stairs and he talks about how it's been so long since he had to fight, and now that he finally has the opportunity to fight, the other Zero Division members have stolen his prey. I love how Nimaya indirectly says that killing the 4-shoot Staffel didn't even count as a workout here, and he had wanted to fight Hashwald and Uryu, who he had presumed to be much more of a stronger threat. It's amazing how effortlessly disrespectful Nimaya can be in some of his scenes. If there's one thing that I'll definitely praise the anime for, is how much characterization it squeezes in for several groups of characters who didn't really get much time to shine within the manga, as the anime really does reveal so much information about the Zero Division to us, as we learn about their various different powers, as well as what their personalities are like. With Nimaya setting his sights on Yhwach, I'm presuming that he had planned to go on fight along with Ichibe, but then a sudden sensation falls over Nimaya's body, as he turns around to find that Askin had survived his attack from earlier. From here, the anime faithfully adapts Askin's encounter with Nimaya, and my favorite thing about all of this is that it doesn't feel out of place at all. Nimaya collapses to the ground as we then cut back to anime original content, as we see Uryu battling Senjumaru, and it seems as though Uryu is rapidly ascending higher and higher into the cage as he uses the Quincy ability Haren Hyaku. It's cool seeing how Uryu gathers Reishi under his feet and then uses that to boost his ascension speed. It's little things like that that make me love the anime so much. Seeing these techniques properly depicted within the anime helps to give the audience an understanding of the vast differences between each race within Bleach and how they fight. Due to the manga being a medium with no real movement, differences like this are harder to depict within the pages of the manga, but the anime does a fantastic job of depicting all of these differences while also communicating to fans the intent of Kubo when he had first designed these battle systems for the different Bleach races. Uryu continues to avoid some of her attacks as he jumps even higher as he fires off his Licht Regen. Senjumaru responds with possibly one of the coolest abilities that I've ever seen used within Bleach, as she grows new golden arms that merge together with their fingers greatly extended, as she then uses her two main arms to rapidly stitch across the fingers, which ends up manifesting an umbrella, and this umbrella allows her to casually block Uryu's Licht Regen attack. I cannot understate how effortlessly she does this, and it almost makes me feel bad for Uryu, as she reduces one of his best attacks to nothing more than a slight downpour of rain. She even jokes about his attack by comparing it to the light downpour of rain that you would see in spring. Her umbrella appears to have also retained the reishi from Uryu's attack, and you can actually see the reishi rolling on the umbrella like raindrops, which is a fascinating addition that's been made to the anime, because this is a technique that we've never actually seen her use before. Following this, we cut to Hashwald versus Kirinji, where Kirinji shows off his amazing speed as he moves around Hashwald, who's barely succeeding in blocking his attacks with his shield. Kirinji's Kinpeka successfully pierces Hashwald's shield as he then uses that as a means to disarm him as he knocks the shield away out of his reach. The two then clash, and to my absolute shock, Hashwald bleeds out and collapses to the ground, as we can only presume that he's just been killed. Kirinji, the man who was losing his breath from trying to hit Yhwach within the manga, scores one of the biggest kills within the 1000-year Blood War arc, and I'm not going to lie, I absolutely love the Zero Division redemption arc that is currently unfolding before my eyes. When we cut back to Nimaya and Askin, whose fight is faithfully adapted, I really do like how Nimaya's final slash was storyboarded in the anime, as it doesn't take him long to successfully kill Askin, as he is assisted by Kirinji, who immediately helps him after defeating Hashwald. We are then taken back to Uryu vs Senjumaru, where it appears as though the reishi that her umbrella has gathered wasn't just for show, as she manipulates it into thread-like structures which chase after Uryu. While he dodges a fair number of attacks, he eventually is struck by multiple, as he then appears appears to have been knocked out. Just when you thought that Uryu was going to be leaving Fraud Academy, he's firmly thrown back in there. We then cut back to Ichibe vs Yhwach as it follows the manga very faithfully as it adapts the events of chapter 606. Now this scene has some really nice animation and some nice depictions of the impact created by the blows of these godlike beings. After Ichibe cuts Yhwach's name in half, we're sent back to the Soul Society to a very strange scene which I'd rather not talk about, as it involves Giselle doing some weird stuff as per usual. The whole episode has an unparalleled aesthetic that shines no matter the setting, and when we go back to the Soul Society, it looks just as good as ever. And to be honest, this was the one time that I'd wanted the anime to not look so visually stunning all of the time, because someone on the Bleach staff thought that it would be a really funny thing to make the cave scene some of the most visually engaging stuff that we've seen in all of Cour 2. Everything in this section of the episode while Giselle is drinking Bambietta's blood just looks amazing. Her eyes gleaming in the dark as she brutalizes Bambietta, combined with the dark red sky, as well as her glowing wings, as we see the light reflecting from the blood splatters from Bambietta's corpse. Everything just looks amazing. Honestly, they didn't really have to go this hard for this scene in particular. Strangely enough, even this moment takes its own spin on the manga's version. Despite having multiple anime exclusive scenes in the past few episodes, Robert doesn't end up appearing in this section of the episode, as we only get an exchange from Lil Toto and Giselle, who appear to be updating each other on the events that are currently unfolding. It makes me wonder if they do have some special plans for Robert's character, because we don't really see him at all during the Ashwaulan scene, which makes me think that they don't plan on killing him off just yet. Now speaking of the Ashwaulan, we cut back to Yhwach and Ichibe as Ichibe prepares to finish off the now weakened Yhwach, but then the Quincy King begins to chant, and I kid you not, what ensues next is probably the most visually spectacular thing that I've seen in all of Bleach. Not just in the 1000 Year Blood War arc anime, but probably the franchise as a whole. I don't think that my words can do it justice, but as all of you have seen, Ashwaulan looked absolutely amazing here. The anime staff show us how this ability takes the lives of several Soldat, as well as the powers of some of the Sternritter, like Bazbi, Giselle, Candice, Meninas, and even Lil Toto. We're also seeing Nanana struck by the light of Ashwaulan as he lays unconscious on the ground following Byakuya's attack. While all of this is going on, the anime further builds upon the source material by giving Mayuri some new lines of dialogue, and I actually really love what he says here. Mayuri appears to have been put in charge of dealing with exposition instead of having the Quincy do it for us, as Mayuri observes the Ashwaulan light and he notices that what is being stolen isn't Reishi, but rather the power that is within the individual souls. This was originally an explanation that was made by Hashward within the manga, but I love how dialogue is being chopped and changed around and given to other characters, as it gives them more of an involvement within the story. And honestly, the explanation feels very natural coming from Mayuri and is less contrived in comparison to the manga, where it feels like Hashward was forced to deliver an exposition dump so that the readers could understand what was going on. With all of the power ascending back up to the royal palace, it first of all replenishes Yhwach's power, as it then expands out and destroys Kiryo's Cage of Life. This is possible again because this has nothing to do with Reishi or Reiryoku, and rather is just the raw concept of power that is breaking through the cage and being used to revive the shoot-starful Uryu and Hashwald. Following this, the light of Ashwaulan forms a massive disc above the entirety of the royal palace as it begins to rain a bluish substance that resurrects the fallen Quincy who were just defeated by the Zero Division. It all looks so absolutely ethereal, and it sells the divine feeling that it's supposed to communicate very well. This is the first time that we see the basic holy forms of the shoot-starful as well as their respective colours. I'm not going to lie, I'm not the biggest fan of the colour of Lil's wings, and I'm really hoping that we get the golden wings when he uses his full power, because I don't think that his final form will look as good if the wings are green. Also, it is really funny to see that Pernaida's wings are literally hands. It's a really cool addition that foreshadows his true identity. Now this episode ends with Hashward telling the Zero Division that the scales have now tipped as the resurrected and empowered shoot-starful prepare to take on Squad Zero once again. Now the episode was paced really well, and what made this episode really shine in my opinion was its ability to alter the story in order to create a more engaging narrative than the manga. The anime wasn't tied by the continuity of the manga, and it's an episode that seamlessly integrates new scenes with additional material, and in the end it results in one of the strongest episodes from Cour 2. Episode 25 had a lot of fantastic animation, great visuals, and pristine art. It's probably the most visually creative episode of Cour 2, and it can easily compete with the highs of Cour 1. Today's episode was storyboarded and directed by Shinichiro Ueda, who is also credited for storyboarding episode 17. Now this episode was storyboarded storyboarded very well, and it was filled with fantastic transitions and layouts that fully capitalized on the amazing backgrounds. The animation was also very solid, as this episode has a strong list of key animators. We had the legendary Ryo on board, along with other amazing animators like Iichi Tominaga, Kyoko Matsubara, and many other fantastic animators. We had an unusually large number of animators from Black Clover work on this episode, and I really hope that we continue to get more and more talent from Black Clover, because it was thanks to some of these talented individuals which had resulted in us receiving another very amazing episode of Bleach. Episode 25 was absolutely stellar, and it raised the stakes even higher, as it manages to not just maintain the hype of episode 24, but it builds upon it astronomically. It also feels like another episode that was meant to set the tone for the actual finale, which is going to happen in episode 26. It's also very interesting to note that after watching episode 25, it is clear that we've heard almost all of the voice lines that were revealed within the original teaser for Cour 2. We got this teaser right at the end of Cour 1. Now there is only one final line that is remaining, and it's a line of Uryu swearing on his pride as a Quincy to eliminate someone. Does this mean that Uryu gets a second chance at redemption in episode 26? Well, we're about to find out, because here's my review of episode 26. The final episode of Cour 2 focuses on ICHIBE's battle with Yhwach, which is adapted from chapters 607 to the halfway mark of chapter 609. Unfortunately, we don't get to see the end of their battle within this episode, but because we are only adapting 2.5 chapters worth of content, we have plenty of time to adapt these 2.5 chapters, as well as having a plethora of all new anime exclusive scenes. The new sections of this episode feature the Zero Division continuing their battle against the Schutzstaffel, who were just revived at the end of episode 25. I absolutely loved the finale for Cour 2 because we had an insane amount of new content that I just wasn't expecting, like the reveal of an all-new sacrifice technique that the Zero Division are able to use, which is easily one of the most gruesome abilities that we have ever seen within Bleach. Additionally, we receive another incredible anime exclusive battle, which features Senjumaru single-handedly fighting the newly revived Schutzstaffel, as well as taking on Hashwad and Uryu. Now be sure to stick around until after the credits of episode 26, because we do have a 4-minute post-credit Shinigami Zukan segment, which is similar to the 2004 Bleach anime, where they had these comedic moments occur right at the end of the episode. Now for the 1000 Year Blood War arc anime, these comedic moments consist of material that wasn't adapted into earlier episodes. Now these moments are voice acted with backgrounds and character bubbles that appear on screen. While it's not the most ideal situation, there is a reason for why this has been done. So rest assured, I will be talking about this in more detail and the implications of having this 4-minute segment instead of, at the very least, wrapping up Ichibe's battle with Yhwach, which honestly could have been done here, but for some specific reason wasn't. Episode 26 picks up with where we had left off following Yhwach's activation of Ashvalen during a pre-intro sequence. Yhwach states that everything in the world exists for him to take, elaborating that this even includes the Soul King, as we are then shown this very ominous visual of him. Yuha then orders the Schutzstaffel to begin their attack, as we then cut to the opening song. Following the intro, Lil kicks things off by immediately striking Nimaya, just like how he does in chapter 604 of the manga. He fires another attack which breaks through Kiryu and Korinji Zanpakuto, as it delivers a very fatal blow against Nimaya. Now the anime continues this trend of diverging from the manga, because after Lil explains how his Shrift ability, the X-axis, works, Senjumaru appears, and in an anime exclusive scene, she picks up Nimaya's body and immediately heals him, as we learn about a new application of her power. Now this is the first of several Senjumaru anime exclusive sequences within this episode, as it quickly becomes apparent that she is the MVP of the Cour 2 finale. Thanks to her assist, Nimaya is able to immediately return to the battlefield. She uses something that looks like wool in texture, and she places it in the holes of Nimaya's body, as she then stitches him back together again. It was definitely a welcomed surprise and another fantastic addition to the anime, which allowed for Nimaya to yell out "Dead morning everybody," and honestly this guy just never ceases to crack me up. The Zero Division within the anime then stand ready for battle, as they advise the Quincy not to underestimate them, because they are stronger than all of the Gotei 13 put together. Now you can tell that Kubo and the anime staff really wanted to expand the Zero Division's role, so that they live up to our expectations, and this is after years of having their lackluster performance within the manga, which had really left a sour taste in all of our mouths. Squad Zero prepare for a counterattack as Kiryu summons more branches which encase them into a ball, as the combatants are all split up. Senjumaru faces off against Gerard as she pins him down, and honestly I'm really surprised that they've depicted her to be this strong, because she was a member of the Zero Division who we saw the least of within the manga, and now she is suddenly suddenly getting the most screen time. We then cut to Kiryu battling Pranida as she summons more branches which crush her opponent. Following this, we are shown Korinji's battle against Askin as his red hot spring water pours down over the Sternritter while he activates his Shikai to attack him with. Now, a new remix of a very iconic soundtrack from the original Bleach anime plays here called Treachery, and it really adds to these amazing anime-only sequences. Korinji does appear to have the upper hand against Askin, as we then cut to an extended battle sequence between Nimaya and Lil. I honestly cannot express how much I love these additions, which do so well to build upon the lackluster manga content from this part of the story. Now, just as Nimaya appears to cut down Lil, we return to Ichibe vs Yhwach as we begin to adapt material from chapter 607, with Ichibe explaining that he was generous to have only cut Yhwach's power in half, and these sequences are beautifully animated as we see some stunning visual effects for both Ichibe's Secret Hado Technique 3 Tebusatsu as well as Yhwach's Blutveen Aufhaben. Now, of course, we know how the story goes as Ichibe then activates his Shikai Ichimonji, which looks very sinister within the anime, and it does a great job of adapting content from chapter 608. We are then shown how Yhwach is struggling to decipher if Ichibe's Zanpakuto is either a blade or a brush. We are then shown some really nice clashes between Yhwach and Ichibe, with the ink of Ichibe's Shikai splashing everywhere, giving his powers an amazing aesthetic look within the anime. Firstly, we see Senjumaru attempt to pierce Gerard's heart with a needle, as he then laughs in her face saying that it is futile before whacking her away and then stepping on her. Kiryu is then revealed to have returned to her slender form as she runs out of Reishi reserves, which allows Pranida to take the upper hand and to take her out. Next up, Askin takes advantage of Korinji underestimating him, as he appears behind him before he swiftly strikes him down. Lastly, we are shown Nimaya vs Lil as the Sternritter states that he has adjusted to his speed. Lil is able to land yet another critical blow against Nimaya, as the Zero Division member had assumed that he wouldn't have shot towards him if Yhwach was directly in his line of vision too. But it seems as though Nimaya has also underestimated the skill of his opponent, as the number 1 Zanpakuto creator collapses and the remaining members of Squad Zero are seen apparently defeated on the ground. Yhwach vs Ichibe then continues as we see material adapted from the second half of chapter 608, with Yhwach attempting to use Sanct Altar to steal Ichibe's power. Once again, the visuals look absolutely amazing here as Sanct Altar is contrasted against Ichibe's black ink. The anime also has this cool shot from a manga panel which was hard to decipher, but it shows that Yhwach had actually been able to rob the color black from Ichibe, which had resulted in the hair on his face turning white. Yuha then fires an attack towards Ichibe as we see the defeated Zero Division members before we reach the midpoint of the episode. The second half of episode 26 begins with a fascinating scene where we are shown an all-new technique which reveals that the Zero Division are able to sacrifice themselves. Nimaya, of course, kicks things off by revealing that the Quincy have yet to see the full strength of even one of the members of Squad Zero, as they get back on their feet as Nimaya decides that Senjumaru will be the one to kill them, considering that she has 1,000 arms, which should be more than enough to defeat the 6 opponents in front of her. Now, despite this technique being a sacrifice ritual, the Zero Division members seem very casual and unfazed by the entire situation, which leads me to believe that they know that they will be revived at some point later on. Now, this technique is very gruesome as there is blood all around Senjumaru. Following this, we do get a massive revelation from her as she states that due to the insane power possessed by each member of Squad Zero, they are restricted from using their Bankai because it would endanger the existence of the 3 realms, causing them to tremble. The Zero Division members are revealed to have linked their lives to one another, and this is so that they can seal away their true Zanpakuto. So, by sacrificing the lives of 3 members of Squad Zero, the Blood Oath seal has been broken, thus allowing her to now unleash her true power as she activates the power of her Bankai. I honestly cannot believe how much love Senjumaru is getting, and the sheer amount that the anime has done to expand her role within the narrative. I was not expecting her Bankai to be revealed here, or the Bankai of any of the other members of the Zero Division for that matter, so this was certainly a welcomed surprise. Now, the reverberations of her Bankai activation is felt across the realms, as we see it felt within the Serite and even the world of the living, as we are shown Isshin and even Ryuken reacting to its activation. I think that this was a really nice addition that they had made to the anime, which is in line with their previous statement about the extent of the Zero Division's full power. So by utilizing different progressive phases of a Bankai titled after Hanks of Yarn, she then defeats the newly revived Schutzstaffel members one by one. This was another unexpected plot twist, and I'll go over each of the phases of her power in more detail within my follow-up manga vs anime video video, which I'm going to be posting tomorrow, so be sure to stick around for that. Lil, Askin, Pernida and Gerard are all easily defeated by her Bankai. She then turns her attention towards Hashward by engulfing him in flames as she then sets him alight. This appears to have defeated Yhwach's right-hand man. Lastly, she faces Uryu as she appears to have entranced him as he focuses on the emblem of the Wandenreich army, as it seems as though his power is being drained from him and is being absorbed into this emblem. He then collapses to his knees as it appears as though he has also been defeated. Now, by examining how her power works, it seems that she has trapped each of her 6 opponents on separate decorated lines of cloth with corresponding patterns which represent the different power of a Bankai which she had used to defeat them with. This is honestly one of the most stylistic Bankai that we have ever seen, and the powers of this Bankai complement the character of Senjumaru, as well as her role within the Zero Division as the one who creates the Oken clothing. We then switch back to manga material which adapts the end of chapter 608 and the first half of chapter 609, as Ichibe appears to be unaffected by Yhwach's attack from earlier, as he explains that he has total power over the color black. He proceeds to activate his Bankai Shirafude Ichimonji after having used his Shikai to cover Yhwach with black ink, which has effectively removed his name. He then uses the white brush of his Bankai to give Yhwach a new name, giving him the name of Black Ant, as Yhwach's strength is reduced to nothing more than that of a black ant, as Ichibe swats him away, sending him hurtling down. And this is before 2 giant hands are manifested as they crush Yhwach in mid-air. Now this then abruptly brings us to an end of the second core of Bleach, as victory appears to have been secured thanks to the efforts of the Zero Division. Overall, the anime did so much justice to the Zero Division, and if it meant that we didn't get to see the Almighty as well as the conclusion of Ichibe vs Yhwach, then I'm perfectly happy with this finale. So much was added and changed from the manga, and we effectively now have a new version of the 1000-year Blood War arc. Now, following the end of episode 26, an amazing preview teaser was posted online for Core 3 of the 1000-year Blood War arc anime, as we learn that this next part is titled The Conflict. Now, there is a ton of stylistic imagery on display here, as we see shots of Chair-sama, as well as hints being made to Mimihagi, and of course teases of Yhwach's incredible ability to Almighty, and also being shown Ichigo and company arriving within the royal palace. Now, the Core 3 teaser reveals that Bleach's 1000-year Blood War arc anime will be returning sometime in 2024. I did assume that this was going to be in April of 2024, but I honestly don't think that this is going to be the case anymore, because from what we had received within Core 2, it seems as though 6 months of waiting time between cores isn't going to be enough. But I don't want to spend too much time talking about this here, because I'm going to make a dedicated video for the Core 3 trailer, which I'll be uploading a couple of hours after this video, so definitely subscribe to the channel and look out for that. The post-credit scene of episode 26 featured a very strange montage where the tone was completely shifted as we received a collection of comedic scenes which took up about 4 minutes worth of runtime of the final episode of Core 2. It was preceded by another almost 4-minute long credit sequence that featured a recap of all of the episode, and it had showed the staff that worked on them, and to say that it was bizarre would be an understatement. In my opinion, it felt like they didn't have anywhere near as much time as they needed to even finish working on this episode, so they just had to push back Ichibe vs Yhwach into the beginning of Core 3 and then padded out this episode with this comedic 4-minute scene. Now, this may have some implications that I really hope the team has a chance to look at and even fix, because this was clearly not the plan for how the episode was intended to end in the first place. But due to how little time they had to finish everything, they ended up having to remove content which should have really been in this episode. Honestly, with all of the amazing episodes that we've had over the course of these 13 weeks, I think that we should cut the anime staff some slack here. From how the final episode of Core 2 ended up, it's apparent that the production team are not being given enough time to work on these episodes. I really hope that this is the reason why they've just said that Core 3 is coming in 2024 without giving us more of a definitive deadline by explaining what month it's going to be in. In my opinion, I think that they need at least 10 to 12 months of production time. I'd love if Core 3 airs between August to October of next year. I think that's more than enough time for the production team to get their heads around Core 3 and all of the additional material that's going to be included. Because up until this point, the manga has really guided the anime staff with how the story is going to progress, but with Core 3 and 4 there's going to be so many anime exclusive scenes that the story is going to diverge even more away from the manga than we've ever seen before. Now, I don't want to point the blame at anyone here, but the people who are responsible for the production team not having enough time are not the animators who are working tirelessly on it, but it's rather the Bleach production committee who have forced them to work under such poor conditions. Now please, I want all of you to really show some support and respect to all of the staff members who've, despite all of these tight deadlines, have still delivered 13 amazing episodes, because none of this is their their fault. And episode 26 was still an absolutely stellar episode, all things considered. The final episode of Cour 2 was well animated throughout, the art also seemed much more expressive than anything that we have seen in this cour thus far, and every aspect of this episode was done very well. The storyboard of Mr. Hikaru Murata was surprisingly good, and it carried all the weight of the episode exceptionally well. We also had cuts from the talented Yugen and a surprise appearance from Yuki Sato, who we hadn't got a cut from throughout the entirety of this cour, so it was nice that they had returned for the final episode. Overall, the animation was very good, and I don't think that there was really any low points in episode 26, so that's definitely a great way to end Cour 2 on. That was honestly a very fascinating end to Cour 2, but with the ending of this episode, we received multiple illustrations from Kubo that suggest that Candice, Meninas, Robert, and Nanana all died from Yuhabak's Ashwalan. I'm assuming this because at the end of each episode, Kubo usually does do some artwork for the respective characters who've been defeated in that episode. Now this does have some extremely interesting implications because some of these characters are still alive within the Can't Fear Your Own World light novels, and additionally he drew artwork for the Zero Division members also, so I'm guessing that it could mean one of two things. Kubo is completely changing events and possibly retconning Can't Fear Your Own World, or what is more likely is that Kubo is making some of these Quincy join Mayuri's corpse unit in the future, or he may have just drawn these artworks as an homage to the character and these characters aren't really dead. We have reached a point where the future has become very unpredictable. Neither anime viewers or manga readers know what to expect here, and it's an extremely interesting place to have left the story off at. Since we're getting the amazing Yuki Sato as a new action and effects animation director, Cour 3 already appears to have some great talent on board, and I'm really excited to see Yuki Sato's fantastic work as she did some incredible stuff on Fire Force, and even a few cuts in Cour 1 were all very impressive. And now having her completely join the Bleach animation team opens up quite a few possibilities of what we can expect for the second half of the 1000 Year Blood War arc anime. Now I do want to address something else that's been really bugging me, because throughout all of Cour 2 we've had leakers spoiling episodes on Twitter several days in advance. I haven't really said anything about this up until now, but on most Wednesdays they would end up leaking 300 images of low quality stills from the upcoming episode that's about to drop on that Saturday. Now over time the leakers have managed to manipulate the perception of fans going into the episodes. They do this by sharing their opinions and spoiling things for clout. Now what often ends up happening is that fans end up being spoiled and it warps the perception of the community going into any given episode. The biggest issue is people forming an opinion on an upcoming episode that they haven't even seen for themselves yet. People like this have effectively let the leakers manipulate them into forming an opinion based upon a few tweets that they've made, and it's to the point that some people are calling out the director of the anime, Tomohisa Taguchi, and other animators who are working on the episode, and it results in people complaining about episodes in advance that haven't even aired in Japan or have even released for them to even see. This is some high level incel behavior which does need to stop. The only way we can counter this is by showing our appreciation for the anime staff with the thank you Bleach staff hashtags. Honestly, we're not going to gain anything by being entitled, and by encouraging the anime staff, we will hopefully encourage more animators to want to work on Bleach going into Cour 3 and 4, instead of scaring talented staff members away from working on Bleach with all of the negativity that's being directed at them on social media. Now at the start of Cour 2, the episode titles from a Russian streaming site had leaked, where episode 26's original title was going to be called A. However, we learnt that the title had been altered to Black. Now the title A is of course in reference to Yuhabak's Shriftability the Almighty, which I presume was intended to be included in this week's episode, but for whatever reason there had to be last minute changes where the episode cut short by not adapting the final portion of Ichibe vs Yuhabak, and instead we cut to a 4-minute post-credit sequence which adapts comedic scenes that were not adapted from the manga in earlier episodes. And we can't really say that these scenes are animated because they end up being still backgrounds with character portraits that are being voice acted over, and it's safe to say that this was done to pad out the runtime of the episode, because episode 26 unfortunately suffered from production issues where the work wasn't done in time for the deadline. While this isn't the ideal scenario, I do think that we need to cut the anime staff slack here, and it's highly impressive that they were able to deliver 13 episodes of content just with a 6-month break between Cour 1 and 2, and in that time they had also gone back and made changes to Cour 1 for the final Blu-ray release. It's evident that the anime staff have been working overtime to deliver the second season of the 1000 Year Blood War arc anime. Combining all of my manga vs anime comparison videos for Cour 2, we easily have over 2 hours worth of changes and additions that I've talked about in Cour 2 alone. We have had so many anime exclusive additions that showed us new fight sequences, expanded upon certain fights, and had shown us fights that were off-screened within the manga, and not to mention expanding the role of the Sternritter, especially the Bambis, and giving us all of those scenes with Ichigo training with Ichibe and not to mention the 4-minute flashback scene with ICHIBE and Yhwach. Cour 2 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime has added and changed so much to the final arc of the manga already, and we can't forget all of the work that has been done up until this point. Yeah, I am slightly upset about not seeing the almighty or the entirety of ICHIBE vs Yhwach, but it's not the end of the world. Cour 3 and 4 have potential to be even greater than anything that we have seen up until this point. And I'd prefer if the anime staff had more time to dedicate towards the end of ICHIBE vs Yhwach and to give us a proper, well-animated conclusion, which they now have every opportunity to expand upon even further because they have more time to work on Cour 3. Despite the production issues behind the scenes for Cour 2, everything still held together better than I expected. It's clear that despite all the limitations of this production, it is one that is still driven by the passion of the team that are working on it. It's unfortunate, however, that the corporate heads that make up Bleach's production committee are not giving Taguchi and his team enough time to do justice to this fantastic anime adaptation. I just want to remind all of you not to lash out at the anime staff because they have been working tirelessly with whatever time that the production committee has given them. Instead of directing anger towards people, just express your gratitude on the work that these animators have done, because by complaining to the animators on social media, it'll just end up making them leave the project, and Bleach as a result will suffer in the long run. So definitely support the animators on social media so that they can continue giving their all to Bleach. Now, I appreciate how bizarre the ending of this cour may have appeared to be, but there is some silver lining, because episode 26 featured an insane showcase of the Zero Division, especially Senjumaru, which is exactly what we were wanting. The only issue was that it came at the cost of the episode having to end at an awkward point in the fight between ICHIBE vs Yhwach. It was made all the more bizarre by the 4-minute gag segment that came immediately after it, but in the long run, we've reached a point where there's so many different ways for the anime to now expand upon the manga content. There is about 70 chapters worth of content left to adapt within Cour 3 and 4, and the pacing for Cour 1 and 2, they've been adapting 70 chapters per cour. So at that pace, it looks like we're going to be getting half of the material in Cour 3 and 4 being anime original stuff. By pushing back ICHIBE's battle against Yhwach, they've thankfully given it more time to be expanded upon, because if they shoehorned it into this episode, I'm sure that people would still be complaining, critiquing it that it's been rushed and it's not doing the manga justice. So despite everything, I think that we still have the best case scenario here. Some of these all new scenes featuring the Zero Division were visual spectacles, and I wasn't expecting Senjumaru to have her Bankai revealed. Now, while in the short term this situation may be disappointing some of you, but I want you to see the long-term vision. While I do have my own personal problems with the runtime of the last 4 minutes of this episode, I think that is better than just having rushed the ending of ICHIBE vs Yhwach. So instead of wasting our time and attacking staff over this episode, I think that we need to turn our attention towards Cour 3 and start speculating about what we can expect with all of the new additions featuring Ukitake's character hopefully, as well as how the Shoot Starful, Uryu and Hashward are going to make a comeback after Senjumaru had just wiped the floor with them. There's definitely a lot to talk about when it comes to the content in Cour 3, and I do hope that they are given more than 6 months of production time in order to return with more episodes. Well, that was episodes 25 and 26 of Cour 2, and this brings us to the end of yet another absolutely mind-blowing batch of 13 episodes. I can't believe how fast the time has flown by, as we are back to waiting for more new Bleach anime content, with Cour 3 already promising to include even more changes and additions, which are going to be unlike anything that we have seen within the first 2 seasons of Bleach. Episode 25 showcased us all new fights, expanding Uryu and Hashwell's role within the story, as well as showcasing more of the Zero Division. Then we had all of the mind-blowing additions made to episode 26, which revealed a new sacrifice technique. It dropped lore on the full potential of each member of Squad Zero, as well as an all-new, never-before-seen Bankai reveal, which I'm sure took all of us by surprise. With Cour 2 concluding with the Shinigami having the upper hand, I look forward to seeing how the story continues to change and improve, and how Yhwach and his underlings will make their comeback against the formidable Zero Division. As always, please let me know your thoughts on this fantastic finale. Were you pleased with all of the additions and changes that were made? What did you think of the MVP Senjumaru? And are you looking forward to Cour 3 based on the all-new teaser trailer that's just dropped? Definitely continue the discussion in the comments, and please stick around to the channel because I have a complete Cour 3 teaser trailer coming up shortly, as well as my follow-up manga versus anime comparison video, which I'm going to be posting tomorrow, so be sure to stick around for that. And lastly, thanks for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.